The Monterey County SWAT team practicing the tactical skills using the tools they would use in a real-life standoff.
2 cars burned down to their frames, a third on fire along with a tractor, and the flames quickly spreading. This the scene when firefighters first arrived. Making matters worse, howling winds pushed the blaze across the gully toward a nearby greenhouse. Side by side with firefighters, employees of both the greenhouse and a neighboring packing company use whatever they can to counter the spreading fire.
It started in the middle of this grassy field and spread to trees and nearby brush.
It got into this forested area behind me where it was thick fuels, and so it became a little bit more challenging. We couldn't tell where it was going.
Firefighters were able to narrowly divert flames from homes in the Oak Hill neighborhood and massive transmission lines carrying electricity to Moss Landing and other areas of North County.
Giving their all to tame the flames devouring this dry, nearly 125-year-old building and the even older antiques inside. Nearby store owners desperately evacuate.
Chaos. I don't know. We don't know what to do, if we should even bother taking things out.
Even if it doesn't burn down my clothing with the smoke, it'll ruin everything.
Neighboring the other side is Araceli Cabala, cooking in her kitchen when she heard a bang.
I was here like boom, so I opened like that, and I was see the flamers came there in the little store. So it was a lot of flames.
This isn't how PG&E typically goes about making repairs, but it's the best way to access this rural area after the Pfeiffer fire wiped out not only homes, but also the company's infrastructure. Carrying cable, the helicopters meeting up with crews on top of Pfeiffer Ridge, restringing power lines. Well, the firefighters didn't come with a lot of water. Fortunately, there was all this sanitizer fluid already here on scene. And while normally it's used to scrub down machines, you can see that here it's being used to fight the fire. These wide patches of burnt land are also known as safe zones, where the firefighters can just run into them and they know they'll be safe in the event of an oncoming fire that turns out of control.
Definitely some amazing athletes at these tryouts, but there's also some guys who've shown up here purely for the experience.
This is on my bucket list. I'm so grateful to the Santa Cruz Warriors for inviting me down here. I sort of invited myself in a way, but they vibrated to it.
Don Weiberg is a retired UC professor, and at 76, he said the tryouts fulfilled a lifelong dream.
There are 4,100 trees here at Ward Ranch, all priced the same, $60 whether you want a big 12-footer or a little 3-footer. Something that's included in that price tag, something you can't get anywhere else, a family experience. In addition to that, on the west end, it's these caves where you need a light to get through. That's the big attraction. And in winter time, when it's so cold, ice in here is a big concern for people trying to get in and out. To give you an idea of the different board sizes, this is what the most experienced surfer rides, about 5'6". This is what a beginner takes out into the water. And then there's the stand-up paddleboard around 11, 12 feet tall, and it also comes with a paddle.
Along Sherwood Drive and underneath the overpass, there's a tent city made up of makeshift homes and old mattresses. Dozens call this area home and live in shelters made up of old cardboard, discarded plywood, and blue tarp.
It's supposed to be the bedroom, but I'm going to make it a little bit bigger.
Margarita Rosas has lived in this encampment since last summer.
It's been hard for me be living out here for 6 months, you know, and but I'm not going to leave myself be here. I'm going to get myself out of here.
Rosas recently lost her job of 9 years as an overnight manager and cashier at Walmart. When she first moved into this area, she lived underneath the bridge overlooking Highway 101. For safety reasons, however, she moved to a more exposed area along Sherwood Drive. Now she builds dwellings for others and makes sure everyone does their part to keep the encampment clean.
I'm extending this area out, as you can see. It's pallets and just like bars that I found to make it livable, which is not going to pass, of course, inspection. But as homeless people, at least we try to accommodate myself and live like this.
City project manager Don Reynolds says the homeless population is mobile and moves place to place.
We've been focusing a lot on Chinatown, and when we go in there and we conduct our sweeps, it causes a dispersal. So over the last 5 years that I've been involved, I've seen that dispersal spread to the PG&E property and then up Sherwood Drive towards the bridge.
The area is a mix of private property and public land.
Occasionally they encroach onto the property there, and the property owner has gone through and cleaning the ditch and other things and caused the camps to move.
For Rosas and others, they know their time here is temporary.
And I'm not going to allow myself to be like this. I'm going at 55, going 60. No.
This is the weakest link, the most fragile population in our society, and we can't get better as a whole unless we take care of our neediest population.
Sirens and applause to welcome a hero returning from war. Severely wounded in Afghanistan, Sergeant Brian Jurgens arrived to a huge crowd in Hollister Saturday. City residents, fellow vets, and even a former American Idol contestant were there to honour his service and break ground on the site of his new home. A gift from the organisation Homes for Our Troops.
We're really excited to be able to raise our family here, and it's an amazing organization, so we're super thrilled.
Brian was on his first deployment to Afghanistan in 2011 when an IED blew up the Humvee he was driving. He lost both legs below the knee and suffered traumatic brain injury. Now, after more than a year and a half of rehab, he can fully recover in his new custom-built residence.
If that doesn't show the love of the country for what the soldiers are doing, I don't know what can.
The new home will be built here on this lot. It will be specially adapted and modified to help with Brian's new physical challenges.
The home is designed to be all one level, has roll-under cooktops, huge roll-in shower in the bathroom, so he can actually have his freedom and independence back in his home.
Homes for Our Troops has built 129 similar homes across the country so far, but they say with more than 1,500 vets severely wounded right now, there's still plenty to be done.
They're still fighting in Afghanistan. They're coming home every day injured, so this is something that we want to continue on as long as there's a need.
For Brian and his wife Jennifer, this generous gift is the beginning of a new civilian life, and in some ways, a new mission for them both.
Hopefully people will, pay it forward, and I know we will. So just want to make sure everybody knows there's other injured veterans out there that need help.
Just thank you, everybody put me home. It's nice,
Reporting in Hollister, Margot Dunphy, NBC News.
Usually at this time of year, the hills along Highway 68 are covered in green pastures, giving cattle a lush field on which to graze. But this year, as the state enters a third dry year in a row, ranchers are relying more heavily on feed and hay.
Probably the biggest impact would be on our cattle producers because they depend on the grass to feed the cow. And if you look at the hills, they're all brown now. There's no grass growing.
The drought is drying up not only land, but also cash reserves. As demand grows, ranchers are paying more for feed. Alfalfa now costs about $260 a ton, more than double the usual amount of $120. But Assistant Agricultural Commissioner Bob Roach says buying feed is just a temporary fix.
The rainy season isn't over yet, and we've had miracle Marches before, and we could get a significant amount of rain that will allow some forage to grow for the cattle. If that doesn't happen, they're going to have to reduce their herds.
Cattle is a $50 million a year operation in Monterey County, and the Ag Commissioner's office says it could see significant losses if there's no rain. Meantime, the situation isn't so dire for growers who are in the off-season now. Unlike farmers in the Central Valley and other parts of the state that depend on an irrigation district, growers use underground water reserves.
We are relying on groundwater, so we can continue pumping, and at some point, that's not what we want to see. You're depleting the groundwater without replenishing it.
Roach says the ag industry has become aware of water conservation and is more efficient in its use of water, like using drip irrigation.
Because they want to be more efficient with the water use, and that's going to continue. And a dry spell is going to push that even more. It's not really impacting anyone's operations yet. At this point, we're just hoping for rain.
High in the hills overlooking the scenic beauty of the Elkhorn Slough, Mark Silberstein is overseeing a massive habitat restoration.
Here are trees that have been through the adaptive filters. They've evolved here. They can withstand the full range of conditions, whether it's drought or freezes or fires.
On its 4,000 acres, the Elkhorn Slough Foundation has planted more than 30,000 plants and trees, all native to the area.
We want to stack the deck in favor of using plants that have been here for a long time.
Here it's oak trees.
In spite of all the dry conditions, this plant is covered with new buds.
And bunch grasses, whose roots reach down as far as 10 feet.
So much of the mass of the plant is below ground. It can store nutrients and water, so it will remain green long after the annual grasses have died out.
Just down the road,
these are plants that have come from a different part of the world, Pittosporum.
Instead of bright and green, they're dead and brown.
They haven't evolved to deal with this full range of conditions.
Silverstein says if you want to avoid this happening to your plants, consider landscaping with natives.
This property is on its way to becoming an oak woodland again. So we're in some ways resetting the clock here.
Live tonight in Gonzales with more for us. Margot?
Well, Brittany, wine producers here in the Salinas Valley and all across the Central Coast are trying to stay optimistic. But some we spoke to today tell us that they are seeing some small effect from this unseasonable warm weather and this lack of rain.
We normally don't water till June. So this is the first time that I've ever had the water in the wintertime.
Usually at this time of year, grape plants don't need much water, but with current drought conditions, that has changed for some vineyards here on the Central Coast.
We do have a lot of concern with it. We're having to irrigate this time of year because there's no moisture in the soil profile. See Buchanugan right there?
Wine producer John Buchanugan says he's worried about water supply for that irrigation.
Water in our wells are quite a ways down, so we're going to have to be real frugal with our water this year.
All of the sap and everything descends down into the roots.
At Bernardus Winery in Carmel Valley, winemaker Dean DeCorth says so far the drought impact for them has been minimal, but unseasonal hot weather is causing vines to start budding earlier this year.
Our vineyard manager, Matt Shea, who manages our personal vineyards here at the state, he's going to be pruning later in the year this year, later in the season this year, so that we'll kind of try to delay the whole bud break and the whole growth cycle.
Many of the vineyards in Carmel Valley and here in the Salinas Valley are more mature and well established. That means they use less water. But winemakers tell us because of the drought, this is not a good time for the planting of new vines.
I think some of the people that are reluctant to plant, that makes more sense because they have to water a lot more to get the roots to establish and start growing. So they really use a lot more water in the first year or two.
Meanwhile, local wine producers say they are watching the weather closely and hoping for a yield as successful as this past season.
We're keeping our fingers crossed that the drought will end.
We're going to get enough rain. We'll never catch up, but anything will help right now. So.
Now, winemakers say they won't see any real impact on the quality of the grape or the size of this year's crop until later in the season. That's around September or October. Brittany?
17-year-old Joshua Rosas is programming his computer to have a conversation with him. And just 1 hour earlier, he knew nothing about computer coding.
I never knew about it. Of course, I was always interested in getting into this type of stuff because I have a brother-in-law who's into computing, and this is pretty interesting.
Let's just remember what the whole idea behind the Hour of Code is.
Mr. Campos, Joshua's computer business applications teacher at Mount Toro High School, signed up his class to take part in the nationwide effort, the Hour of Code.
You run the program, let's see if it works. Move forward, turns left, moves forward again. See how it's going through the motions right here? So that's how you get there.
It's a 1-hour online introduction to computer science designed to demystify code and show that anyone can learn the basics to be a maker, a creator, an innovator.
It's getting the kids to think sequentially, and a lot of what programming is that logic and sequence. I can't say I'm a programmer myself, but I understand that much, and it's important that they think logically, and that applies to a whole bunch of fields, whether it be mathematics or anything else for that matter.
With just a few lines of code, I can have a system send an email to everyone on Facebook wishing them a happy birthday.
Code.org, a nonprofit dedicated to expanding access to computer science education, launched the Hour of Code. And big names in the tech industry like Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg have endorsed the movement, hoping schools across the country will log on, pointing out that computer science is a top college degree and computer programming jobs are growing at 2 times the national average.
If we can get them excited during this Hour of Code this week, it's more than likely going to encourage some students to go out and seek out that programming ability that's going to get them good jobs and a good career in the future.
Campos says he felt like the Hour of Code was a learning opportunity that he just couldn't pass up. He says if even one of his students walks out of class today with an increased interest in programming, it was a success.
We had a couple of kids that are very quiet kids and that normally wouldn't speak up. And as soon as you get them on that computer programming, it seems to speak to them, and they're doing very well. A couple of them were already programming in Python, which was really neat.
The Hour of Code is happening all this week during Computer Science Education Week. In Salinas, Michelle Imperato, KSBW, Action News 8.
It's supposed to be 60 to...
Surrounded by test tubes and Bunsen burners, Mariah O'Grady and Joanna Rivas are in their comfort zones. Inside their honors chemistry class at Notre Dame High School, the pair worked on an experiment that looked at how temperature affects solubility.
Let's measure the mass of this first.
And it's their shared interest in science that earned them a trip to Washington, D.C. next month to attend a national conference for students who want to become future medical leaders.
So I opened the letter and I just remember being really whoa, this is so exciting, I totally want to go. And
we ran into school super excited, and we went and told Miss Guido that we got accepted.
The pair say they've always been drawn to the sciences, and this trip gives them the opportunity to learn more about what they want to do.
I want to become a neurosurgeon or a forensic scientist because I think that's the most interesting thing I'd want to do.
I want to go into biomedical engineering because I really enjoy technology and science, and I think that would be a really good opportunity to be able to help people.
I'm really proud of these girls, and I'm really proud of the fact that they're stretching themselves. And it's not just that they got accepted to a program, it's that the program is in Washington, D.C. They're going to get a chance to meet some very accomplished people.
During the 3-day conference, the girls will meet doctors and scientists who are doing cutting-edge research on medical advances and other students who share their goals.
I just hope one day that I can create technology that will help save other people's lives.
Reporting in Salinas, May Chow, KSBW, Action News 8.